The first thing McGough did was laugh at the judge. Not a nervous laugh, not a confused laugh. A sharp, ugly punk grin of a laugh, tossed right into the middle of a packed courtroom like a lit match. The clerk froze. A deputy's hand moved toward his belt. A young mother in the front row flinched so hard her chair scraped the tile. And when Judge Caprio slowly lifted his eyes from the file and looked down at the man in the wrinkled black jacket, every person in that room felt the temperature change. Everybody knew, all at once, that this hearing had just crossed a line it could never uncross. McGough stood there with his chin up, greasy hair tucked behind his ears, cheap chains glinting against a faded t-shirt under a blazer that looked borrowed and slept in. He had that sloppy swagger some men wear when they've mistaken internet slogans for intelligence. He wasn't just smirking. He was performing. For the gallery. For the cameras. For himself. Like the law was a joke. Like consequences were for other people. Like this was all beneath him. Across the aisle, the woman he had terrorized sat in a pale gray cardigan with both hands wrapped around a worn leather purse, her knuckles white, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. Her name was Elena Ruiz, a 31-year-old overnight nurse and single mother who had spent the last 2 months sleeping with her phone in her hand because McGough had convinced himself she was part of some conspiracy against his sovereign rights. If you've ever watched a man walk into court thinking arrogance is armor, stay with this one, because before it's over, I want you to tell me the exact moment you knew Judge Caprio had stopped seeing him as a loud nuisance and started seeing him as a danger. At first, it looked like a routine bail hearing. That was the surface story. The state said McGough had been arrested after filing fraudulent liens, refusing lawful orders during a traffic stop, stalking Elena Ruiz after she rejected fake legal paperwork at the county records office, and sending escalating threats that turned one bizarre paper dispute into something much darker. McGough insisted he was being unlawfully detained under maritime commercial statutes, whatever that meant in the world inside his head. He had 3 overstuffed binders on the table in front of him, all tabbed in neon paper, full of pseudo-legal jargon, homemade seals, and pages stamped in red ink with phrases like living man and no contract. He kept touching the binders like they were holy texts. Judge Caprio, calm as still water, looked nothing like the storm he was about to unleash. His robe sat neat across his shoulders. His reading glasses rested low on his nose. His voice, when he finally spoke, was so measured it made everyone else sound more frantic by comparison. "Mr. McGough," he said, "this hearing concerns release conditions. I suggest you listen carefully." McGough leaned on the table and gave a lazy shrug. "I don't answer to employees." A hiss of disbelief moved through the courtroom. Elena looked down at her lap. Her posture was straight, dignified, almost painfully controlled, but her foot trembled beneath the chair. She had worked double shifts for 6 straight nights. She had a 7-year-old son at home. Her landlord had already warned her about problems after strangers began circling the building. She did not look like someone who belonged in a legal circus. She looked like someone dragged there by another person's obsession. The prosecutor, Dana Mercer, rose and began with the clean version. McGough had come to Elena's office demanding she file a private sovereignty declaration that claimed authority over several municipal parcels and attempted to exempt him from taxes, licensing, and criminal jurisdiction. Elena, who processed property filings, told him the papers were fraudulent and could not be recorded. He returned twice. On the 3rd visit, he told her she would regret making a free man your enemy. The gallery shifted. Somebody whispered, "Jesus." McGough smiled wider. Then he said the line that changed the energy of the room. "She's just a desk girl with a government badge. Women like that get real brave when they think a courtroom can protect them." The courtroom went silent. Dead silent. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. Elena's face didn't collapse. That almost made it worse. She just inhaled, slowly, and stared straight ahead with that exhausted dignity only decent people seem to have when they're trying not to give a bully the satisfaction of seeing them break. Judge Caprio did not raise his voice. He did not lean forward. He simply removed his glasses, folded them once, and said, "Mr. McGough, disrespecting this court is foolish. Threatening a woman you targeted is suicidal." A ripple of shock ran through the room, but McGough still thought this was a game. He started talking over the prosecutor, over the clerk, over the judge himself, using phrases he had clearly memorized from late-night videos and message boards. He called himself a natural flesh-and-blood man. He said the judge's flag had fringe and therefore no legal authority. He demanded proof of claim. He accused the deputies of kidnapping. He laughed again when the state requested high bail. That's when everything changed. The prosecutor asked to play body cam footage from the arrest. On the screen, McGough stood outside his dented pickup truck on the shoulder of a dark road, headlights washing his face in pale yellow. He refused to show identification, called the officer a corporate pirate, and kept repeating that his vehicle was not a vehicle but a private conveyance. Some people in the gallery actually smirked. For a moment it felt absurd, annoying, pathetic. Then the video kept rolling. When the officer mentioned Elena Ruiz by name and asked whether McGough had been near her apartment building, McGough leaned toward the camera and said with chilling calm, "Maybe I was serving notice. Maybe next time I serve it when the kid's home too." The air left the room. Elena shut her eyes. A deputy near the wall stiffened. A low gasp escaped from somewhere in the back row. McGough jerked upright at the defense table. Out of context. Judge Caprio looked at him for a long second. Threatening a mother through her child, he said, rarely improves with context. And still the reveals kept coming. The state introduced security footage from Elena's apartment complex, grainy night vision, a hooded man pacing near the mailboxes at 2:13 a.m., then zoomed stills. The jacket matched the one recovered from McGough's truck. Next came photographs of fake liens filed not only against Elena, but against her landlord, the county clerk, and even the elementary school district her son attended. Then came printed messages from McGough's own social media account where he bragged to followers about teaching paper pushers fear and using process as punishment. Whispers spread. The courtroom atmosphere grew tighter, hotter, heavier. Even McGough's posture changed. The swagger loosened at the edges. Then Dana Mercer called Elena Ruiz. She stood slowly, smoothing the front of her cardigan with trembling fingers. Under the courtroom's harsh fluorescent lighting, she looked even smaller than before, but when she spoke, her voice came out steady, low, and heartbreakingly clear. She said she didn't know McGough before he came to her counter. She said she followed the law and rejected his false paperwork. She said after that, the letters started arriving. Thick envelopes with red thumbprints and bizarre warnings. One included a satellite image of her building. Another listed her son's school pickup time. She said she stopped parking in the same place twice. She said her boy asked why mommy checked the locks 3 times every night now. And then, with tears finally bright in her eyes, she said the one thing that broke whatever distance was left in the room. "I wasn't scared for me," Elena whispered. "I was scared he'd enjoy how scared I was." The courtroom went silent again. McGough shifted in his chair, then made the worst decision of his life. He rolled his eyes and muttered, loud enough for the microphones to catch it, "Victim act." Dana Mercer didn't even need to react. Judge Caprio had already heard it. What followed felt less like a hearing and more like a dismantling. Calm, precise, merciless. The judge asked for McGough's prior filings. There were 11. 11 fraudulent liens against people who had crossed him, a building inspector, a tow yard owner, a former employer, a librarian, a family court mediator, hidden patterns, same nonsense language, same escalation, same obsession with frightening ordinary people who had less power and fewer resources to fight back. Then a detective testified that McGough had been monetizing this intimidation online, selling freedom packs, teaching others how to flood clerks and public servants with sham documents until they broke. By now the smirk was gone. McGough's face had started to lose color. He kept licking his lips. His binders, once clutched like weapons, now looked like trash piled in front of him. Judge Caprio finally leaned forward, and when he spoke, the entire courtroom seemed to lean with him. "Mr. McGough, men like you always arrive wrapped in slogans," he said. "You call intimidation liberty. You call harassment principle. You call cowardice philosophy. But the law is not confused by theatrics, and I am certainly not confused by you." McGough opened his mouth. The judge raised one finger. That was enough. Total silence. Then came the monologue people would repeat for months, the one that spread because it sounded like justice itself had found a voice. "You are not here because you love freedom. You are here because you enjoy pressure without accountability. You found a way to weaponize paperwork against people who go home tired, people who work counters and night shifts and raise children, and trust that the system will not leave them defenseless against a man with too much time and too little conscience. You targeted Miss Ruiz because she was decent, because she was working, because you thought a woman with bills and a child and a modest life would have no choice but to fold. That calculation tells me everything I need to know about your character and everything I need to know about your danger. McGough's shoulders caved. Judge Caprio's voice remained quiet, but every word hit like iron. Let me make this painfully simple. Sovereignty is not a magic spell. A fake lien is not a legal argument, and a bully with a printer is still a bully. A stunned murmur moved through the gallery. Then the ruling came, and it came like thunder. Bail is denied, Judge Caprio said, given the pattern of intimidation, witness tampering risk, repeated fraudulent filings, threats involving a minor child, and the defendant's open contempt for lawful process. This court finds no condition of release sufficient to protect the victim or the community. I am also ordering immediate referral for expanded criminal investigation into organized paper terrorism and financial exploitation associated with these filings. McGough stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. You can't do this to me. Judge Caprio didn't blink. No, Mr. McGough, he said, voice cutting through him like a blade. You did this to yourself. For one frozen second, nobody moved. Then the deputies stepped in. McGough's face, once smug and lit with that punk bravado, crumpled into pure disbelief. Then anger, then panic, real panic, the kind that strips a man down to what he actually is. He started shouting about contracts and admiralty and fraud and tyranny, but now it just sounded small, hollow, desperate. Elena sat down again, and something in her had changed. She still looked tired. She still looked like a woman who had carried too much fear for too long, but now she also looked lighter, straighter, stronger, like the room had finally chosen truth over noise. In the weeks after the hearing, more victims came forward. County employees, private citizens, even a retired school secretary. The fraudulent filing network widened. McGough's online channels disappeared. New charges followed. Elena was granted full protective orders, and local volunteers quietly helped her move to a safer building. Her son started sleeping through the night again. At work, co-workers pooled money to replace the car she had been too afraid to drive for weeks. And for the first time in months, she walked from her shift to her front door without checking over her shoulder every 10 steps. That is what real justice does. It doesn't just punish the arrogant. It restores breathing room to the people they tried to suffocate. So tell me in the comments the exact moment you knew McGough's performance was over. Like this story if you believe bullies deserve exposure, subscribe if you want more courtroom reckonings where dignity wins and fraud gets crushed, and share this with someone who needs to remember that sometimes the loudest man in the room is only one honest judge away from total collapse.